Okay, we're going to start out this series on storyboarding with just doing some faces. Faces are pretty important as far as storyboards are concerned. You'll notice that when you watch a film that the majority of the shots tend to be medium or closer. And as you start to build out your storyboards, start creating something like a medium 2 shot or just a medium shot or a close-up or over-the-shoulder shots, all those are going to be very oriented towards understanding what a person's face, where the person's face is in the frame, and also what direction they're looking. So I'm just going to work with a mechanical pencil, so I don't have to worry about sharpening it. I recommend just doing a little bit of loosening up exercises. And our big deal here is we're going to make oval shapes for our heads. And so I'm just going to draw an oval. And different ways of thinking about drawing these ovals or actually doing them is through how you're moving your hand. So our inclination is to set our palm down and then draw, because that's the way we write. And it works, and it especially works if you're drawing small. But if you need to just really get into the vibe of creating these shapes, something you might consider is actually just moving your hand around, or your whole arm around. And so what I'm doing here is actually moving from my shoulder rather than just my wrist or even just my fingers. And so if you start actually moving from your shoulders, and actually lifting your hand off of the paper, you might find yourself being able to do really smooth, even circles or ovals. One of the problems with kind of planting your palm and then trying to draw one, especially if you draw it slow, you may find that it's going to be a little wiggly as you go around the circle. And ideally, you'd be able to draw them quicker, and as you draw them faster, you can get rid of those wiggly lines. Or definitely take some time to just create some ovals before we even worry about them being faces. So just make a crowd of people. And once you get your wrist warmed up and your hands warmed up and your shoulders, then you can start really focusing on making sure that you're finishing off the oval properly. So it comes to some kind of meeting point. So after we get warmed up, the next thing we need to do is start thinking about these heads as having a face. And primarily we're going to worry about the direction that the face is pointing, and then also the kind of where the eyes are. So that's usually what we're paying attention to most when we look at a face. So I'm going to start with my oval. So I got my oval, and I want this person to look straight forward. So I'm just going to draw kind of a plus sign, and what that's doing is it's showing me the center of the head, and then where the eyes are, the line of the eyes. So if we do that again, looking straight forward. If I want this character to look a different direction, maybe I want to have them look towards my right, their left. Start with the head, and for a center line, I'm actually going to do an arc that's mainly on my right side of his head. So he's going to be looking that direction. We put in that arc, and then another little arc for the eyes. And in this case, I'm also going to go ahead and let that eye line go all the way to the edge of the oval. That helps us again understand that his eyes are actually way over here. So I'm going to do that again. So it's maybe a little larger. So again, this person is looking that direction, towards the right, our right, as we look at him. So to flip that, in order to make this person look the other direction, just start with an oval and just put it on the other side. So now that person is looking that direction. So not too bad. The main difference to really pay attention to is when the person is looking straight at you, we're looking at a very straight line. So right down the middle of his face. Whereas when he's looking towards a direction, off to the right or off to the left, we want to make that center line into an arc. So instead of a straight line, so we don't want to do something like this. Looks a little bit more like maybe a knight with a helmet on or something, but instead we want to make sure we have an arc here. So that's left and right. So we probably want to do up and down as well. And so we'll start out with an oval, and we'll make this person look straight up. So I'm going to go with a straight line down the middle of the face, and then an arc kind of high on the head. So now that person is looking up. I could probably do a better oval. Let's try it again. So he's looking straight up, like so. So looking straight down. Do it again. And in this case, I probably could have stood to not put that center line so high. So I'm going to erase that. Or even just redraw it. Like so. So now this person is, again, looking up and looking down. Can probably make this curve a little bit more as well. So if we looking down, here we go. I'm still not happy with this one. I'm going to do it one more time. That's better. All right, so looking down. So right, left, up, down. Now if it's like down to the right, down to the left or something like that, then we just think about the center line, again, becoming an arc. So if he's going to look down to the left, doing something like that. So not too bad. It just gives us a sense of where the eyes are and what the direction of what direction the head is going. All right, so after you've drawn some ovals, then the next thing you want to do is start thinking about maybe a little bit of facial expression. So I'm going to go in and draw another one, and go ahead and make him look that direction, and add a little extra stuff to him. So I'm going to add some eyes, and a mouth, and a nose. So what this does is just kind of gives us a little bit of idea of what his expression is, you know, how he's thinking, what we can expect. If you wanted to go a little farther, you could look at eyebrows as well, and just kind of put them in there. Now, eyebrows aren't really all that useful unless you want to show some other kind of expression, like being angry or sad. Then they can be pretty useful. So this is kind of more of a straight look. We can kind of move on, do another one. Actually, I'm going to do this a little bigger. Put in some eyes. And this time we'll make him a little happier. So give him a smile. And so the smile can be the same as what you drew in elementary school, pretty much. So just a couple of eyes and a smile, little nose, eyebrows, and we get a sense of how this character is feeling. So feel free to put in these kind of embellishments to your normal just crossing curves, and we'll get to know what's going on with the character a little more, especially if it's useful for that particular moment in the story. So if you have something like a reaction shot, then it can be pretty useful to go ahead and put some extra details in there. If you want to change this up a little bit, maybe make the person upset. So again, stuff we learned a long time ago as children. These little sketches work pretty well as far as communicating what's going on with the character. So the next thing we need to be able to do is consider being able to draw like a male and female. So this can be useful for just being able to identify characters and also getting a little more of a sense of the story in your storyboards. Initially, I usually think about this in terms of hair, but you can also look at it as in terms of other like costume pieces as well. So we'll most of what I've been drawing so far we can kind of consider a male. So I'm going to start with a female. So we're going to do the head, of course. So start with that oval, and then I'll have her look in that direction. So basic directional thing. And if I'm trying to do something quick and I only have like one female character to even worry about, then I'll just do something like that. Maybe make it a little longer. So just giving the character some hair is can be pretty useful as far as creating a female character. Now, if your male character has really long hair, then this will work for that as well. But again, the point is just to be able to start to individualize these characters a little bit. Other ways of giving a person an individual character is if they have like a hat on or something, so we could kind of figure out where that hat line should be. Give it a bill. Maybe fill it in a little bit. The hat maybe something like more of a larger billed hat. And then eraser is sometimes nice to have here. If you don't like the hat kind of covering the eyes like that, then you might do something like start with the face. Figure out where that face is looking, and then just filling it in. I can probably do that again. Hats are tough, so they're worth doing a few times. That's a little better. And then getting the eraser out can be kind of a pain, so I like to usually shade something too. So hair, hats, glasses. Glasses can be useful if you need to give somebody a particular look. So think about it in terms of props, costume, hair, just whatever it is that's needed to give that person a little bit of identity in your pictures. So I did some kind of like long hair people here, but we can also look at short hair. So again, just starting with the oval, figuring out where the person is looking. Let me get those eyes in there. And then if you prefer that they not be bald all the time, then you can just kind of give them a hairline and figure out where that needs to go. And one of my big things about storyboards, especially from a just general director, filmmaker point of view, is that they shouldn't take very much time. It's one thing if you want to create some comic books, that's probably going to take some time because you want to put some good detail and be very consistent with them. But when it comes to storyboarding, the idea is just to figure out how are you going to tell this story visually, and how are you going to approach a scene. How many different shots are you going to need? How can you kind of break the shots up to make the scene a little more interesting? Those are all things that you should be able to just, as you think of them, be able to put them to paper. And so that's why these pictures may look kind of crude, but they get the job done, which is just to communicate your idea, not to create something that's just all by itself. If we wanted to make this person look a lot more realistic or something, we certainly could, but that's not the point of why we're storyboarding. So again, think of ways of maybe creating a little bit of unique identity for these characters. Based on your script. Do they wear a hat? What kind of hair do they have? Do they wear glasses? Do they have facial hair? Just give those some thought, and it can help communicate your ideas just that much more. Last thing I want to cover is just when you have two characters in the same shot. So if you have a two-shot or an over-the-shoulder. Now, usually when we start getting into actual framing, we need to work with a frame. So I recommend that that you go ahead and draw a frame. So it's a rectangle, a little bit longer horizontally than vertically, and then we'll just have a two-shot of two characters kind of looking at each other. So I'm going to put in two heads, so it looks like an old tape deck or cassette at the moment, but then have these two characters look at each other, and then make one female. So just a basic two-shot, a little bit of space between them, making sure that they're actually looking at each other. So you probably want to work that a few times. The other shot that I want you to practice is an over the shoulder. So again, we'll start with a frame, and this time I'm going to have the character that we're looking at is here. So he's looking towards this way, just off camera, just looking at the person in the foreground. And so the foreground person, their heads are typically going to be larger and oftentimes actually broken by the frame. And so we can go ahead and still create that whole oval, and then maybe consider giving him a little bit of a shoulder. And then when we actually do our storyboard layout, we'll be able to crop this out. So it's okay right now that you have drawings that go outside of your rectangle. That's perfectly fine. It's almost preferable. So now we're looking over the shoulder of this character in the foreground. Now, one thing I did here is I put this shoulder kind of coming out of the oval, but if we really wanted to be a little more correct about it, the shoulder would break that off. So it looked more like that. So we can do that one again. So do a frame, do a person we're looking at, and then do the larger person in the foreground, and go ahead and give them a shoulder. And if we wanted to, give that person a body. We're going to be talking about bodies more next week, but if we want to fill out the person at least, we can do something like that. I'm not really into necks when it comes to these types of drawings, so I don't worry so much about them. But yeah, I want you to be able to do a regular two-shot, an over the shoulder, and then a reverse over the shoulder, and I'm going to leave that one up to you. So we should see the opposite of what we have here. So we should see our person looking that direction over here, and then the over the shoulder on the left side of the frame. So both of these are showing the same shot, so I want you to show the reverse.